Hello, welcome back to the Premier League review. On today's show, we're going to talk about how Erik Ten Hag schooled Eddie Howe at Wembley, but also going to dive into a little bit of Trossard, false nine chat, and Phil Foden on the right wing. And of course, talking about Martin Dubravka's first trophy in English football. Anyway, let's start with the leaders of the Premier League at the moment, Arsenal. They beat Leicester City 1-0 in the Premier League. What we saw Mikel Arteta do was slightly change his setup and line-up to accommodate Leandro Trossard as a false nine. Eddie Nketiah has deputised following Gabriel Jesus' injury this season, but Arsenal have struggled a little bit in the final third in recent games as teams have sat very, very deep, which kind of restricts Nketiah's ability to not only get in behind defences, but in terms of the touches in between the line, it has to be absolutely perfect or the opposition win the ball back. Teams now, because of Arsenal's performances this season in the Premier League, are defending their final third and allowing Arsenal possession to break them down. I think the Trossard selection as a false nine was an absolute masterclass from Mikel Arteta at the weekend. Trossard is a much better player at receiving the ball in between the lines and linking with his teammates than, of course, Eddie Nketiah. Trossard naturally a left winger, but also kind of a number 10, and has played false nine for Graham Potter's Brighton and, of course, De Zerbi's Brighton before he left for Arsenal. I think one of the big things with his game is ability to link, but also drift into the wide areas. False nines operate in a number of different ways. They drop off the line to receive to feet, creating that extra man in midfield, almost as a playmaker, but also they like to vacate that central space, move wide, draw the opposition over, which will free up space for other players to move in. I feel with Trossard in that central area, dropping deep and looking to link the play, it allows not only Saka to take up the number 9 striking position, Martinelli, but also we've seen Odegaard taking up these kind of narrow positions as the number 9 in the team. And I feel like that gives Arsenal a little bit more depth in the final third. Not only that, but statistically, Trossard is a much better player at linking with Gabriel Martinelli than Eddie Nketiah. Trossard passed to Gabriel Martinelli 8 times in the game against Leicester City. You compare that to the previous Premier League game against Manchester City with Martinelli starting, and it was a completely different picture where Eddie Nketiah completed just a single pass to Martinelli. Martinelli's form this season has been absolutely fantastic over the entire season. He's got 9 goals and 2 assists in 24 games. He is arguably one of the goal scorers in the Arsenal team, but his form in recent weeks without Gabriel Jesus has kind of tailed off, and I really do believe that having a false 9 with Gabriel Martinelli gets the best out of him as a forward. And the goal against Leicester was a classic example of a false 9 drifting wide and then a wide player taking up that inside position. For the goal we saw a transition from Arsenal winning it back well in midfield, and Trossard took a position on the left-hand side, drawing the defence over, drawing Suter over, then nutmegging him with a lovely little shift of play, step over, then the nutmeg. Martinelli raced in and then fired across the goalkeeper. This is something that I don't think we really see with Eddie Nketiah in that striking position. Eddie Nketiah is more of a channel player, I'd say, that operates in the left channel, right channel, and spins in that 9 position, whereas with Trossard, obviously naturally more of a left winger than a number 9. We see him pull into those wide areas, which consequently opens up space for a Martinelli, for an Odegaard, or a Saka. Statistically as well, in terms of progressive passes received per 90 in the league for Arsenal, Trossard is averaging receiving 16.8 progressive passes. He is involved in the game versus Eddie Nketiah's 6.33 per 90. It's nearly 3 times more progressive passes received for Trossard, and we see that in Arsenal's build-up. I think that was another area that Arsenal were so supreme with Gabriel Jesus in the side. We'd see this kind of like 3 number 10 position picked up by their 2 central midfielders and, of course, Gabriel Jesus dropping off the line, and the progression was very, very easy. We don't get that as much with Eddie Nketiah as a number 9. I'm not saying Eddie Nketiah is a bad player. I just think Trossard as a 9 suits the team a lot more than Nketiah at the moment, as Arsenal are looking to break people down, makes them more fluid. But also, Trossard is a more clinical finisher. We saw that with the goal that was unfortunately ruled out from VAR from outside the box. A brilliant finish into the top right. Trossard has overperformed his XG in the last 2 years, whereas Eddie Nketiah is underperforming his by 4, and so is Gabriel Jesus. Trossard is slightly more clinical than both of the forwards for Arsenal, which is an interesting one going forward. I think Trossard will be used in a number of different positions, but I could see in the short term him being used as this number 9 through the middle. Arsenal need that fluidity. They also need the ability ability to open up different combinations and different positions. And we can see with the average positions that Trossard is a lot more left-sided than Eddie Nketiah. He will pick up that left wing, the inside channel, which does mean the rotation with Gabriel Martinelli is a lot better, and we'll see the best out of Gabriel Martinelli with someone like Trossard as a false nine. In terms of the league table, of course, Arsenal sit top of the Premier League with a game in hand, 2 points clear of Manchester City. Manchester City played this week against Bournemouth. It was a really mixed game where City dominated the first half. They absolutely battered Bournemouth in the first half. Bournemouth came back into the game. They racked an XG of 1.32, 13 shots on target. And that's something that's really got to concern Manchester City defensively. They are still all over the place as Guardiola looks to kind of figure it out for them. What's the best back four? Which players are being utilised in the right areas. And I feel like that's something that gives Arsenal a massive advantage in the title race. The last 3 games for Manchester City, they've been defensively very, very poor. You're looking at the Arsenal game, they won it 3-1, but Arsenal amassed a large expected goals of 1.64. You take the next game against Nottingham Forest in the Premier League, similar situation where they're around 1 expected goals. And this is something that City used to be so good at doing, is keeping their opponents down with the chances. And the sort of the back end of the game, when City had obviously rotated their squad around, brought some subs on, the performance levels dropped too much. But talking about the positives of Manchester City, Phil Foden back in the goals and the assists. He was absolutely sublime against Bournemouth, especially in that first half. Created 7 chances, 1 big chance created, 1 assist obviously for Haaland running in behind. But his threat is, really causing the opposition a lot of problems at the moment when he's playing for Manchester City. And one of the big things that I like about Phil Foden is how he's holding the width and depth of the attack. At times with Riyad Mahrez and Jack Grealish playing on the wings, it's the same type of play. It's working the ball into their feet, it's them running at the opponent, and we don't see that as much as Phil Foden spinning in behind. It's kind of that Leroy Sané, the Sterling that's been a part of Guardiola's City for the entirety of the last 7 years. One wide player that will consistently spin in behind and cause you a threat with those movements. And I think we don't see that for City with Jack Grealish, with Riyad Mahrez playing together. So I think Phil Foden's going to be a big part the back end of the season for Manchester City. Obviously Mahrez came out clutch in the Champions League, but Foden at the moment seems like he fits the team a little bit better. So starting Foden on one wing and having Mahrez play one side, and then obviously with Jack Grealish coming into the team, and then Mahrez coming out, Foden playing on the right. I think that's going to be a real, good use of Phil Foden in the sort of the back end of the season. But he was fantastic. Top for chances created, top for passes in the final third, top for touches in the opponent's box, top for crosses, a goal and an assist. A sensational performance for Phil Foden. But I do worry for Manchester City defensively. In the back end of the Champions League, you can't afford to have periods of the games where you're sloppy defensively. We saw that against Leipzig in the Champions League when they turned it on. They opened Manchester City up a number of times. This is something that's a concern for City. Defensively, they need to be a lot stronger if they want to win the Champions League, which is, of course, what Pep Guardiola wants to do. I think Ruben Dias's form has been very, very good in recent weeks. 3 clearances, 4 out of 4 of his tackles won against Leipzig, and similar good statistics against Bournemouth, sitting in the middle of that kind of back 3. 7 clearances, 1 block, 1 interception, 4 out of his 5 tackles won, and 147 touches of football. His form is going to be crucial for City. Defensively, they need someone to stick it together, and he could be the perfect guy for them in the back end of the season. But it is massive advantage to Arsenal in the title race. I think the signing of Trossard is going to become a masterstroke when we look back at it at the end of the season. Right, it's time to talk about how Erik ten Hag schooled Eddie Howe at Wembley to lift his first trophy as Manchester United manager, ending nearly a 6-year wait for Manchester United to lift a trophy. Erik ten Hag got his tactics absolutely spot on. We're going to go through a little bit of analysis, why it works so well, and why he diffused one of Newcastle's biggest strengths in the Premier League this season. Manchester United set up with the 4-2-3-1 as we've come to expect, with Fred playing in midfield instead of Sabitzer, Weghorst back to number 9, and Newcastle, of course, playing their 4-3-3 shape that we've kind of expected to see under Eddie Eddie Howe. So from a tactical level, one of the big things that Newcastle do supremely well in the league is press extremely high up the pitch and look to turn the ball over high. They're arguably a bit of a gegenpressing side, a little bit Diego Simeone-esque in terms of how they defend, but also a little bit like Liverpool in the first few years under Jurgen Klopp, where they'd press, they'd be aggressive, they'd turn over the ball and they'd counter-attack. The big thing that Manchester United need to do was to work out how to play through the press, or how to eliminate that from a strength from Newcastle to becoming a weakness. And the big thing that Erik Ten Hag did, not only did he give Newcastle the ball and allow them to dictate and allow Man United to counter, but also they played over the Newcastle press, which was absolutely fantastic. One of my concerns for the game was if United were building from their kind of deep defensive shape through midfield, you'd argue that Newcastle have got the exact system to stop Man United playing. They're super aggressive in midfield with Joelinton and Longstaff. They've got three forwards that work exceedingly hard. This would have been an issue. But what Man United did from right at the start of the game is they simply went over the top either to Weghorst or to Marcus Rashford running in behind the defence. These 2 points are so important to Manchester United win. The big thing, not only did they play over the press, but you had the ability to win that second ball. Newcastle commit a lot of bodies forward in their pressing shape and structure. You're talking 5 players are basically out of the game if you go over the press. It was almost Jose Mourinho-esque management from Erik Ten Hag, and I think that shows the quality of manager that he is. He is happy to play possession football. He's happy to progress, to overload you in certain areas, but when the time is necessary, he's happy to play long, to go over the press and break your opponents down. Not only did it mean Manchester United had a lot of opportunity to attack the back sort of four of Newcastle, because at times Bruno Guimaraes would press high as well, but also the second balls. When Man United didn't win that first ball with Weghorst, they were much more equipped to win the ball back with Fred, with Casemiro especially, covering that defence, winning the second ball, and then again transitioning on Newcastle's defence. It was a key component to the game going long. We're going to have a look at some of the clips. Right, let's take a look at the first example of Manchester United going over Newcastle's press and creating chances. As we can see, Manchester United are building out from the back. David De Gea with the ball. But you can see Newcastle's aggressive press. We've got Almiron picking up Lisandro Martinez. Callum Wilson's sitting on Raphael Varane. Diogo Dalot's been picked up by Sir Maximum. Casemiro has pressure on his back. The big thing that Newcastle want you to do here is play the ball out short, and they want to engage and they want to press you. But if you defuse this weapon, there's a lot of opportunity to score and create in the final third. So in this clip, of course, Newcastle in the shot right now have 4 players that have pressed high. Bruno Guimaraes on Casemiro and the 3 forwards as mentioned before. Simply going over that negates the threat of losing the ball and being transitioned on in your attacking shape. A key component to this successful tactic from Erik Ten Hag. De Gea going over the press, we can easily see now the advantage of looking for Marcus Rashford in behind the defence. The space between Newcastle's midfield and defence is big because they're squeezing high, but also there's threat of pace in behind, so the defensive line needs to drop. In this clip, Rashford's of course making that run from out to in behind the defence. If, for example, the ball was up to Rashford and he was contesting an aerial duel, Manchester United have Wout Weghorst in the position to win the second ball. They've got Bruno ahead of Joelinton. Fred's making a move up, and of course Antony is on the right wing. They've got to overload in that sense if it's a second ball situation for United to win. But of course David De Gea's long ball is superb. Rashford's in behind the defence. That's basically going from out of your back from your goalkeeper into the opponent's box in one pass. And it's just absolutely perfect tactically for Manchester United. Not only does that, but you can see the Newcastle's midfield is trying its hardest to get back into a defensive position. But because of the attack, it's so swift, it's so direct, they can't get the bodies back. Rashford cuts out to the side, and we can see United have a 5-on-5 in the Newcastle defensive third. Of course, Bruno Guimaraes is kind of out the game here. United have got their attackers there. In this instance, Antony cuts inside onto that stronger right foot. There's not really any protection for the fullback because Joelinton's trying to block out that central space as well. Cuts the ball in, and I don't know whether it's a cross, whether it's a shot. It's in between both, but Lloris catches the ball. But that instant side of Manchester United going over the press, looking for Rashford in behind the defence, getting into the Newcastle final third, forcing their midfielders to play high, then play low. perfect tactics. So let's take a look at the goal, or the free kick, shall we say, that led to the goal. It was a similar situation from Manchester United going long from David De Gea. In the clip right now, we can see Newcastle centre forward Callum Wilson, both of the midfielders high, and Bruno Guimaraes deep in midfield. Again, United are simply playing over, but also they're looking to win those second balls. And we can see in this second clip how United have created a 5v5 once again on the Newcastle back five. Wout Weghorst goes up for the aerial duel, he loses it, but United now have an advantage around the ball. They're creating a superiority with numbers around the ball. Newcastle's midfield have gone out to press, they've been aggressive, now they've got to drop deep, which means Man United have got 4 players around the ball. Newcastle's midfielders are nowhere near, not in terms of supporting the ball, the little layoffs, it's not going to happen. Manchester United simply win the ball back through Casemiro, who's superb throughout the entire game. And now United have got the opportunity to play through. There's simple bodies in between the lines. Shaw looks for Fred. Again, Sean Longstaff is drawn to the ball with the aggressive pressing. This is the other thing that you can do against Newcastle. You can draw their press in and play through. You know, that's what United could have done out of the back, but they decided to go long. But in these midfield areas, they could draw the press in, play through with little 1-2 combinations. You could see Casemiro driving through midfield. He did it superbly all afternoon. The big thing that United have created, again, is a 4v4. You know, we've seen 5v5s. There's a 4v4. Marcus Rashford out wide. Massive space in front of the Newcastle defence for both Bruno and Weghorst. You know, we'll see a little bit later on Weghorst linking the play, but that option could have been played. Rashford could have slipped it to Weghorst, could have combination play with Bruno, could have slipped Anthony in. But at this point, Newcastle are in a very, very poor defensive situation. Marcus Rashford 1v1 with Trippier. Bruno Guimaraes has to come over and commit the foul. But we're starting to see a bit of a trend in the game. United playing over the top, winning the second ball, busting some short passes, utilising the wing and the width and allowing Rashford to run at the opponents. Of course, the foul is given. Bruno Guimaraes commits a very, very silly foul. And Luke Shaw puts a great ball into a fantastic area. So have a look at Casemiro, though. The way that he attacks the ball from deep is so brilliant. Looking from, that run, attacking the ball with the pace. Fantastic ball from Luke Shaw, gets up, beats the 2 Newcastle defenders, 1-0 to Manchester United, but all coming from playing over the Newcastle press. Let's move through to the second goal of the game, and it's a similar situation. United not building out, they're going long. It's a tactic throughout the game, up to Weghorst. This time, of course, Weghorst doesn't win the aerial duel. Newcastle do, but United win the second ball once again. It was a similar thing in a lot of the games. United's 2 defensive midfielders did really good work, especially Casemiro winning the ball back in front of Manchester United's defence. And it's not the second ball that they win, it's the third ball flicked on from Almiron. Casemiro reads the play superbly. But we've got another situation where Newcastle, we can see with Almiron, is getting drawn to the ball very, very quickly, which creates a bit of a problem for them later on in the move. Casemiro heads the ball up to Marcus Rashford, and then we see one of the best skills I've seen all season. Yes, Rashford meant to do this. Bringing the ball down on his left foot, cannoning it on his right foot, and then playing through to Weghorst. United have created a 3v3. Quick combination play, beating the Newcastle press. Similar thing that we've seen before. Weghorst running at the defence. Great run from Marcus Rashford, slipped in behind, and the finish looping over Karius from Marcus Rashford to grab another goal this season. But all comes from that aggressive second ball winning ability that United have gone from going long, ball coming back, winning the second ball, stretching Newcastle's midfield, drawing them high, dropping it low, and then combining to get United 2 goals up. And finally, we can see, not only David De Gea going long, but we've also got United going direct out of the back. The work rate was superb at Wembley again from Manchester United. They showed great determination and work through all of midfield, forcing Newcastle into long balls. But it's a similar situation where United are looking not to play through in certain situations. As you can see in this moment, Newcastle have got 5 players in this zone versus United's 4. You're going to go long, you're going to drop it up to Bruno Fernandes, use the pace of Marcus Rashford in behind the defence. Again, creating situations where you've got equal numbers on Newcastle's defence. It's a constant theme in the game. If Fred has more awareness in this situation, he would utilise the 2 players at the back post, and United could have gone 3 goals up. But tactically, superb from Erik Ten Hag, going over the Newcastle press and creating transitional moments through winning the second ball. And what did this mean for the stats? Well, number 1, Manchester United had 39% of the ball, but had 10 shots on target in the game, completely dominating Newcastle in that environment. Newcastle Newcastle only had 2 shots on target. But also, if you take a look at David De Gea's passing, the interesting side we mentioned previously, the long balls. David De Gea played 25 passes in the game, 19 of which were long balls. He played only 6 short passes through the Newcastle press. And when you're playing a team that's their biggest strength is high pressures and turnovers, you've got to go long. In the Premier League this season, Newcastle are ranked 5th for high turnovers and 3rd for passes per defensive action, 2 pressing statistics. If you look at the David De Gea numbers as well, you're looking at 91% of his goal kicks were launched, which is goal kicks over 40 yards. David De Gea this season has averaged 61% of his free kicks launched compared to the 90% against Newcastle, showing that difference in tactic, but also 41% of his passes long in the Premier League versus 76% in the final. Superb tactics. Other players that deserve a lot of plaudits in the game. Casemiro battled so well in the heart of the midfield, won 5 out of his 7 tackles in the game, but also made 11 ball interceptions and picked the ball up 7 times, which was the most amongst Manchester United players. Casemiro was superb, but also was Raphael Varane, who won 100% of his duels. Casemiro and Raphael Varane have now won 15 trophies together, and the first of many at Manchester United. United, the only English team to win a trophy this season, and the only team still in 4 competitions in Europe. David De Gea also kept his 181st clean sheet, which makes him the leading clean sheet taker in Manchester United history, more than Alex Stepley with 175 and Peter Schmeichel with 180. David De Gea's performance in the final was absolutely superb, with the ball at his feet, but also made some big saves in that first half. Manchester United dominating Newcastle, forcing them to play a game that they didn't want to play, and Erik ten Hag winning his first trophy and schooling Eddie Howe at Wembley. But guys, there are my thoughts for the final. Do get into the comments below any players that you think I've missed out. Of course, Weghorst was superb. His ability to hold up the ball and flick it on, but also his work rate. Won 3 out of his 4 tackles in the game. Got an assist for that Rashford goal. He started to become a real focal point for Manchester United. Rashford, of course, scored from the flank, created 3 chances in the game, 2 shots, both on target, and completed 4 of his 7 dribbles at Wembley. Fantastic team performance for Manchester United. But anyway, guys, subscribe if you're new. Check out SofaScore, and we'll see you later.